Hey, I'm Ollie. Welcome back to the second episode of the Fuddy Devlog series. Now, if you haven't watched the first episode, I highly recommend that you watch that first, because if you saw the name Fuddy Devlog, you might not know what Fuddy is. So that will give you all the intro to what the app is, what we're making on this journey. So I highly recommend you look at that first. And before we get into anything else, there was some feedback from the previous episode. Stacey, who watched the previous episode, gave a bit of information about the Fat Controller. So the Fat Controller being a character in the Thomas the Tank Engine TV series, which when my sister was younger, much younger, used to say the Fuddy Woa, which is where the name Fuddy came from. But the Fat Controller, not being a very politically correct term, Stacey informed me that Sir Topham Hatt is the correct name for the Fat Controller. So that is what they use in the later TV series. It seems to have been his name all along, and the Fat Controller, he used to be called the Fat Conductor, I think, and then he became the Fat Controller when the rails got nationalised. There's a whole big story about it. But so Topham Hatt is the correct name, hence why there's a random name on the board here. So, back to it. What we're going to make in this episode. So, we are going to get a logo. That is the target. So by the end of this episode, Fuddy will have a logo. So let's get into how we get a logo. So logos. Now, I quite like to get a logo done early on in a project. Generally, I have a very rough idea about a color scheme, which is good for when you're trying to create a logo in the first place. But once I've got a logo, I can generally visualize an app a lot easier than that. Just main reason I like to get it done early on in a project. But there's a few things that a logo needs to do. So first of all, it needs to be memorable. It needs to be recognizable and distinguish your app from others. And in some cases, it can describe what an app does. It depends what type of logo you go for, but it can be very useful as almost like a marketing thing to show what an app will do. So the first thing is that I'm not a designer. I've dabbled with Photoshop a bit. So how do I normally go about creating logos? Well, the first thing is I sometimes give it a go. So I'll go over the Don't Interrupt app because I gave that a go. You can also go to a low-cost kind of freelancer service. There's a few that I'll list as well. And you can also go to a professional, a person or an agency or a separate company that will do a whole design for you. So doing it yourself, I'd say mixed results. Sometimes if you don't know what you're doing and you try and create a logo, it can be fantastic. For one of my logos for Don't Interrupt, I thought that actually went quite well. For other apps, it can make it look really amateurish, and that can have quite a detrimental impact on the perception of your app. It could look quite rubbish really, and people would avoid it. I certainly know that if I go through an app store or something and or a website that isn't very well designed or has a rubbish logo, I'll generally try and avoid it because it looks like people haven't invested money in the right place. So as I said, I've dabbled with Photoshop before. Sometimes with my apps I can kind of envisage what the logo will be. So the example I've got is the Don't Interrupt logo, which hopefully you can kind of see that it is the logo matches the name. The app actually is there to stop notifications at particular times. If you want to focus on some work, Don't Interrupt can stop notifications on like Slack or GitHub and things. So as you can see, the base of it is a stop sign, and there is a bell in the front with a cross through it. So it's everything I thought of about stop and interruptions. So I was quite happy with how that came out. Now for Fuddy doesn't really have a very descriptive name. So I'm thinking more of a mascot approach. So I don't think doing it myself would really work for this. The next step would be a low-cost freelancer. There's a site I've used a couple of times called Fiverr. I think it was called Fiverr because at one point everything on the site had a base price of $5. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore, but you can get a pretty decent logo for between $10 and $20. There are alternatives out there. They all work slightly different. So there's Upwork, 99 Designs, and Freelancer. You can go to those places to get logos. I do like the Fiverr stuff that much that I've got an affiliate link down in the description. So if you use that link with Fiverr, you will get 20% off your first order, and also I get a couple of dollars credit that goes into my Fiverr account. So if I need to do any logos in the future, it can kind of use that credit balance. It's not money or anything. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just quite like the service. And then following on from a low-cost freelancer service will be a high-cost agency. Now, this is more of a hobby project for me. So paying thousands and thousands of pounds for an agency to brand everything isn't really an option for me. Maybe it is for you, but I'm just going to ignore it for now. So we're going to go, well, we're not going to go for a high-cost agency. I'm definitely not going to do that. So because I've got more of a descriptive or less descriptive app name, I need some assistance with coming up for a logo. So my approach is to use Sir Topham Hatt as an example character, as a mascot that I'd like to use for the app. But that means that I'm going to be going to Fiverr for their expertise in creating a logo. So there are a few things we need to get before going to Fiverr. We need to have a description of what the app is and some example images and some ideas on what we think should be in the logo, maybe like color schemes and shapes and things, because the freelancers get that information, they then go off, they come up with 1 or 2 examples, and they'll come back and you can refine that, but you need a starting point for it. So we're going to go to the PC, get some sample images, and go to Fiverr and order our logo. So let's go. So here we are at the PC, and I've got Fiverr opened here. You can see you can just start searching for the type of request you are after straight away, or you can come down to any of these sections. So you can see it's more than just logo design. They have kind of WordPress builds and voiceover, artist, social media, book covers, data entry, a whole wide host of stuff, and also supported by a whole bunch of pretty big name companies. So what we're going to do is we'll go into the logo design and start filtering down to find a logo. So we're in the logo design section, as you can see here. I've also picked a few options so you can choose your different logo types. So I've gone from minimalist, PNG requirements, and requiring a transparent logo, because that's kind of how I like to have my logos, so I can put them on any background. I've also set a budget of £30 because I've got £34 in my balance. And also delivery time, express 24 hours. You can obviously choose any time you want, but if you want things done faster, you can choose that, and that narrows down everything. And I've been looking through these at the various prices. This one stood out for me. There's multiple different packages. So there's basic, where you get 2 logo designs, of which I think you will probably end up choosing one with unlimited revisions and a logo and with transparency. There's also standard, which gives you 3 high quality initial concepts, logo transparency, and a social media kit, and the vector file. So this was definitely appealing to me, so I think I'll go ahead with this one. And as you can see, my balance has now dropped quite a bit now. This is the information that I didn't want to bore you by making you watch me enter it. So the request from the freelancer was to give a company or brand name, tagline or slogan, a description, a logo type, and a preferred color scheme. So I've said that the app's Fuddy, easy video management, distribution, analytics. I've also given a link to the previous video which describes what the app does, and also 2 images. So these are this is the original Sir Topham Hatt, or Fat Controller as I knew him when I was growing up, and this is the more modern version of it, just to give them an idea about what I was after. So what we're going to do now is take a break. I'm going to go for a walk. The weather doesn't look that great outside, but that's not going to stop me, and I'll come back to you as soon as I've heard back from this person. So you might notice I've got different clothes on now. So that means that either a day has passed or the rain really got to me on that walk. Unfortunately, I did have a coat on, so this does indicate that it is a day later. But one of the things about the Fiverr order is that we had 24-hour delivery, and it was earlier today that I got the first revision back. So let's just show you the couple of revisions. So there was 2 logos that I received. There was actually 3, but 2 of them are actually so similar that I'm not even going to bother showing them. So there are 2 logos, and here they are here. You can see, so I gave no indications of color scheme at all, and you can see there's 2 quite different designs. I'm not worrying about the font at this point because I can change that later, and we'll be doing that in the next episode anyway when we do branding. You'll notice, so first is we have a play button with a kind of weird shaped F in it, and the other one is an image of the Fat Controller, or Sir Topham Hatt. So the first thing I thought of was the play button idea is quite cool. It's quite simple, a bit like the Don't Interrupt logo, where it's a stop sign as the base, this being a play button as the base. I thought it was cool. The other logo with the Sir Topham Hatt, I think, was a bit too close for copyright reasons. You could probably very easily notice that that is a character from the TV show, so I wanted to avoid that. So the first thing I did was then kind of focusing on the play button, and I kind of thought the next best thing with the Sir Topham Hatt character would be to just take the top hat and put that on the play button, because that's a bit like my Don't Interrupt logo. So I went back, gave some revision notes, and we came back with this, which I think is getting better. It's along the right lines. It's a play button. It has a top hat. I'm not very happy with the top hat itself. If you actually zoom in quite far, there's some real pixelation around it. So what I did then is, although I wasn't 100% happy, I confirmed the delivery, which then means that the payment gets released, and I accepted that the delivery was fine. I gave some reviews saying that it was what I was after. In an ideal situation, that would be the logo that I would use going forward, but that isn't the case for this one. I thought, I'll pay for it and I'll take it from here. So with my limited Photoshop skills, I then started from scratch, but using the kind of play button idea and using the top hat idea, and also a different color. So I am here to present to you the new Fuddy logo. I think it's pretty cool. So you see the color is completely different. The color kind of goes along the lines of with my Don't Interrupt stuff. It's not a regular kind of primary color. It's also a color that is not representative of any of the major video platforms such as YouTube, Vimeo, or Twitch, which are kind of red, blue, and purple. This is another color on top of that. The other thing is that the play button is slightly more squashed, because there was a whole bunch of extra space on the side, and it's a completely different top hat, a royalty-free top hat logo. I feared that when I did a Google image search, that the top hat that was in the previous revision came out in a Google search, so I'm not sure if that was legitimate or not. So it's this logo is almost completely from scratch, but heavily influenced by what we got from the freelance from Fiverr, which I think is completely worth the cost of paying it. So yeah, it's a very good starting point. So we now have the beginnings of a color scheme and a very simple logo, which means that in the next episode we'll be able to get branding started. So we can take the color, we can expand that into a color palette, we can then pick some icons and a font, so we can get a logo with the Fuddy name following on afterwards with a font that we want. So basically, if that interests you and the rest of the journey into creating this app and getting it released, don't forget to subscribe so you can catch up with the next video. Also, if you enjoyed figuring out and finding out how I get logos created and seeing if that works for you, please do like the video, give it a good thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Cheerio!